Hi everyone, welcome to the world of Pokemon. I'm Mewt and I decided to start a Genlock challenge starting with Pokemon Leaf Green. At this point everyone knows what a Nuzlocke is, but in case you don't, here's a quick explanation of the rules. For those of you who aren't aware, a Nuzlocke is a self-imposed rule set made by the Pokemon community meant to make the games more challenging. You can only catch the first Pokemon you encounter in each area. If one of my Pokemon faints, it's considered dead and I have to release it or box it. Battles must be played in set mode. Since it is a hardcore Nuzlocke, I also don't use items in battle, which pushes me to think more critically about whether I could switch out or just risk losing them on. I'm also not going to be using any legendary Pokemon unless I need to for the story. Now, a Genlock challenge is a spin on the usual hardcore Pokemon Nuzlocke format, but instead of just the one run, I play through multiple generations. After beating the champion in each game, I then bring a baby version of the surviving team I used into the next game, building a stronger bond between myself and them. Each Pokemon I do bring with me, when brought to the next game, does get their ideal nature. I know some people give further boosts like better IVs, but I won't be doing that. Think of it as kind of an extended Nuzlocke, as all of the rules apply moving forward, but with some slight tweaks, specifically the species clause. When moving to the next game in the challenge, any Pokemon that played an important role in the previous game's progress, such as battling in a gym or during the champion fight, cannot be caught again in any of the other games going forward, even if it was fainted or lost during the run. For example, if I used an Eevee in a gym battle and it was defeated or not used in a champion fight, I can't catch another Eevee in the next game. However, if a Pokemon like Krabby was caught but never used in battle and stayed in the PC, I could catch and use that Pokemon in future runs. Alright, and with the rules explained, let's get started into the game. I'm one who almost always picks the grass starter in my games. Today was no exception. I confidently chose Bulbasaur and started my journey. Bulbasaur is a pretty good start in the journey, as it has early strength against the first two gyms, Brock and Misty with the rock and water types respectively. Starting in Route 1, my first encounter was a Pidgey, which was really good. If I'm able to keep it through later in the game, I have immediate access to a Pokemon that can learn Fly, that also has a good damage output. Then quickly going on to Route 22, I find myself a Mankey with a good attack stat and a great backup in the first and potentially third gym. Mankey has some great potential moving forward. With now 3 team members, the first rival battle is set to be really easy, with the only thing that could be a little difficult is the starter disadvantage. But with a Pidgey that's able to deal damage while not being weak to anything on his team, it was made really easy. Going into Viridian Forest, I mostly expected a Caterpie or a Weedle of some sort, as they take up majority of the encounter rates. But if you didn't know, Pikachu is a rare encounter you can get, but it only has a 5% chance of spawning. However, I guess the Nuzlocke gods were looking down on me and gave me a Pikachu. Pikachu is really good, even in these games, without its modern move pool, though it can be more of a glass cannon with a quite lacking special defense and especially its physical defense stat. But to balance it out, its speed and both attack stats are insanely good, allowing for good amounts of damage, especially coming in useful in the second gym. Going in quickly to fight the first gym leader, Brock. Brock uses rock-type Pokemon, with his team comprising of his Geodude and Onix. Having picked Bulbasaur as my starter, the first gym was quite easy, as I was able to get through it just using Vine Whip one time on each of his Pokemon. Then going on to Route 3, after beating Brock and getting the Boulder Badge, I caught a Nidoran. Nidoran was great, as compared to some of the other Pokemon in the team, Nidoran has the ability to evolve fairly quickly, as you can get a Moonstone as early as the cave that comes up at the end of the route. But before going in, I bought the Magikarp from the guy in the Pokemon Center next to the entrance. While this isn't usually something I do on my regular playthrough, I wanted to knock Magikarp off the encounter list for future fishing encounters, even if it did cost 500 bucks now, which in the early game is quite a lot. Magikarp is also an amazing Pokemon to have, as it evolves into Gyarados at level 20. Gyarados is an amazing Pokemon to have just in general, as it has a good base stat total of 540, which in these games are much higher than the average, putting it fairly close to the 580 total of the legendary birds. Going into Mount Moon, I caught a Zubat who never saw the light of day, as I wanted the ability to use it in the future game, preferably once it has its Crobat evolution available, which isn't until at least the Gen 4 games, Platinum and Soul Silver Heart Gold. Before taking on the gym, I wanted to go to Bill's house where I can get the ticket to the SS-An. However, there are a few challenges that have the potential to stop that. As I go to make my way over, I get a run-in with my rival. With a growing team of 4 Pokemon, he has a Pidgeotto, Abra, Rattata, and Charmander. While his Abra at this point only knows Teleport, the rest of the team is pretty scary. Knowing he'd lead with his Pidgeotto, I decided to lead with my Pikachu. While my Pikachu was super effective against his Pidgeotto does neutral damage, and without being paralyzed, it outsped my Pikachu, and with its low defense stats that I mentioned earlier, it did a good chunk of damage. Even after paralyzing it with Pikachu's static, the Pidgeotto could still hit first with its quick attack. While I did prevent it from attacking one time, it was still able to knock Pikachu from 42 at full health to 10 health before I knocked it out. After he switched out to his Rattata, I sent out Indy my Nidorina. With its double kick move, I was able to quickly knock it and his Abra out without any issue. Then came the Charmander. Charmander is quite scary here, as not only is it strong against my starter, it has Ember as its stab move. There aren't many fire types in these games, and it does a lot of damage early in the game. Using Ember out the gate, he did a chunk of damage and managed to burn Indy. I decided to then switch out to Devin my Pidgeotto to tank the Embers and use Gust to knock it down low. I then switched to Ronnie the Pikachu to get off Quick Attack. Since it's a priority move, it automatically went first, knocking out his Charmander and preventing it from killing any of my team. The rival battle, however, isn't the only challenge going up to Bill's house. There's also the Nugget Bridge, which, honestly, I thought it was going to be a lot more difficult than it ended up being. I ended up knocking out most of the trainers with Devin the Pidgeotto. After helping Bill change back from changing himself into a Clefairy, I made my way to the second gym leader, Misty. Misty is a water-type gym leader with the team of Staryu and its evolution Starmie. This can be a pretty difficult fight, as water types are, as Misty says, all-out offensive. Water types are in these gens pretty strong, as they aren't weak to much besides grass and electric. But with the move Water Pulse, they have the potential to do damage and confuse your Pokemon on top of that. Keeping this in mind, I led with Kelvin, my Ivysaur, using Vine Whip to knock out her Staryu. While I was able to almost take out her Starmie too, leaving it at literally 1 HP, she healed it and forced me to do it all over again. With that being said, Kelvin was a pro and knocked it out. After officially knocking out Misty, the water-type gym leader, I made my way over to Vermilion City. The most important Pokemon I encountered on the way was Liam the Sandshrew. It was crucial for me to have Liam at this point, as not only is Sandslash one of my favorite Pokemon period, but with the next gym being an electric type, the type advantage of having a proper ground-type Pokemon is more than useful. Before getting to that gym though, I needed to grab the Cut HM from the captain of the SSN. But of course, a rival battle needs to happen before that can happen. Leading with Ronnie, my Pikachu, again to take on his Pidgeotto again, this time went much better, with Ronnie only getting hit one time before taking out his Pidgeotto. But it's when he switches to his Raticate that's an issue. Immediately wanting to avoid any death with Ronnie, I switched from Ronnie to Andy, my Mankey. I figured my fighting type would be the best counter for it. Sadly, here's when we got our first death, as Andy immediately fainted to the first Hyper Fang, giving us our first death of the run. Not wanting to lose too much momentum though, I switched to the more tanky Kelvin the Ivysaur to handle this goddamn Raticate. After hitting it with one Razor Leaf and dealing about half of its health, that guy switched to his now Charmeleon. Not wanting to risk losing my starter, I switched to Shay the Gyarados. Using Water Pulse learned from the TM Misty gave me, the Charmeleon was swiftly taken down. When he sent his Raticate back out, another Water Pulse immediately shot it down, avenging the death of Andy by literally killing his Raticate. Then he sent out his Kadabra, which was quite scary. Kadabra being one of the best Psychic-type Pokemon, not just in general, but especially in this game, without any Dark-type Pokemon, depending on the move. Bite is literally the only way to do any super effective damage. Luckily, that's exactly what Shay the Gyarados has. Using the move twice while Kadabra was failing to land a Disable allowed us to win. I then went and sadly laid Andy to rest in the PC, and brought back Indy the Nidorina, who was originally replaced by Liam, the newly evolved Sandslash. Moving on to Lieutenant Surge, I decided to lead with Liam for the immediate super effective stab against his team. Lieutenant Surge's team comprised of Voltorb, Pikachu, and a Raichu. Voltorb, while generally weak, is really only scary with its ability to paralyze and its move Sonic Boom. The Pikachu and Raichu have the same threat to them, being the move Double Team. If you aren't able to take them down fast enough, they can easily stack the move, preventing you from reliably getting a hit. Back to the battle though. Leading with Liam, his ability to use Dig prevented him from being hit more than once by the Voltorb. The Pikachu, however, immediately started stacking double teams, causing my first Dig to miss, but the second one knocked it out in one hit. Now the Raichu can be a bit more bulky than the Pikachu before it, but even that can only go so far, as its defense stat is naturally still quite low. Even with it using double team, Liam was able to hit the Raichu and knock it out in one blow with a Dig, winning me the 3rd badge. Now's the point where we get into the mid-game. As of right now, the team lineup is kinda set in stone. The only need is to make micro adjustments from gym to gym, making sure we have any type of diversity that we need. So far we have Liam the Sandshrew, Shay the Gyarados, Devin the Pidgeotto, Kelvin the Ivysaur, and Ronnie the Pikachu. Moving on from Lieutenant Surge, we make our way back to Cerulean and towards Rock Tunnel. Within Rock Tunnel, after catching a Geodude and making our way out through Lavender Town and onto Route 8, we come across a Vulpix, which was a fairly rare encounter at 20%. With the next gym leader being a grass type, a fire type here is amazing to have, as currently my Pidgeotto is the only counter I have for it. Temporarily swapping Liam the Sandshrew out for Jasmine the Vulpix to take on the next gym seemed like a logical step, as it was the only member weak to grass types. After catching up Jasmine to the level cap and going to the department store to get a Firestone and a Thunderstone to evolve Jasmine and Ronnie, we are now ready to fight. Erica's the 4th gym leader and has a team with a Victory Bell, Tangela, and a Vileplume. Erica's whole thing is using different status condition moves like Stun Spore, Sleep Powder, and Poison Powder to weaken the stats and chance of attacking with your Pokemon. Along with all of them having the move Giga Drain, allowing them to heal bigger amounts of health from damaging our Pokemon. I decided to lead into the Erica fight with Jasmine, planning to kind of just get away with sweeping her whole team with Flamethrower, and honestly, that's exactly what happened. Victory Bell and Tangela went down 1 hit each. Our Vileplume did manage to survive one, but missed her one chance to Stun Spore me before a final Flamethrower won me the battle. While I'm sure I may have gotten similar results with my Pidgeotto, I'm glad I did catch Jasmine, as it gave me that extra bit of confidence going in. While I'm in Celadon City, I need to start taking down Team Rocket, starting with their HQ hidden under the casino. It's been a while since I've played through Kanto, admittedly, so it took me quite a while going through the whole HQ to find where I needed to go, but none of the grunts were much of an issue. After eventually finding the elevator key, I make my way to Giovanni. Since I decided to take on Erica first, my Pokemon are pretty well off in terms of levels and preparation. Giovanni's team consists of an Onix, Rhyhorn, and a Kangaskhan. I already knew that Giovanni mainly used ground-type Pokemon, so I led with Shay the Gyarados, using Water Pulse, immediately knocking out his Onix and Rhyhorn. Kangaskhan took me using Dragon Rage to get a higher consistent damage output than Water Pulse could, due to Kangaskhan's higher special defense stat. After taking out Giovanni, I went and got Devin the HM Fly from the lady hiding just outside the city. Flying back to Lavender Town, ready to take down my rival yet again. After leveling up my team a bit, evolving Kelvin to a Venusaur, I entered the tower. That guy led with a Pidgeotto like usual, so I had Ronnie make quick work of it with a Thunderbolt. When his Gyarados came out, it was just a rinse and repeat with Thunderbolt OHKOing it. His Execute did put Ronnie to sleep, so I pivoted to Jasmine to use Flamethrower. Jasmine then proceeded to take out not just that, but the Kadabra and also his Charmeleon, as after he used Ember, it activated Jasmine's ability Flash Fire, which boosted Flamethrower enough to knock out Charmeleon, even with it being not very effective. While in Pokemon Tower with a 9% encounter rate, I managed to run into a Cubone, which I quickly caught and put in the PC just in case something bad were to happen to Liam. Wanting to move on to Saffron City now that I have access to it, I decided to quickly make work of Team Rocket's forceful takeover of Silphco. After leveling up my Pokemon more, finally evolving Devin into a Pidgeot, I was ready to not just take on my rival again, but also Giovanni for a second time. That guy is so predictable at this point. Knowing he's leading with his now Pidgeot, Ronnie swiftly took it out yet again with a single Thunderbolt. Same thing with his Gyarados, swapping into Jasmine to take on his Execute. After being paralyzed, Jasmine was able to hit a Hoko Flamethrower on the second attempt. His Alakazam Calm Minded immediately, and not wanting Jasmine to faint, I swapped to Liam as the Alakazam stacked another Calm Mind and then a Future Sight before Liam could knock it out. Upon that guy switching to Charizard, Liam took the Future Sight. Barely living with 5 HP, I quickly swapped to Shay the Gyarados and Water Pulsed my way through the multiple smokescreens and flamethrowers. Shay barely won, as I was a little below this guy's level cap. The reason I ended up being below the level cap though is because of the next two gyms, Koga and Sabrina, having the same level. So my plan was to go in slightly underleveled for one and go in at the proper level cap for the next one, as to avoid any overleveling. But back to the Team Rocket invasion, Giovanni's team now consists of a Nidorino, Kangaskhan, Rhyhorn, and a Nidoqueen. leading with Shay again, using Water Pulse to damage and luckily confuse the Nidorino, allowing Shay to win with barely a scratch on her. Rhyhorn was easier as it was quad weak and went down with only one Water Pulse. The Kangaskhan came out and used Fake Out and Mega Punch, doing large damage to Shay, so I swapped in Kelvin, the now Venusaur, using Sleep Powder, Leech Seed, and Sleep Powder again, because Kangaskhan immediately woke up after the first one. After missing the second Sleep Powder, another Mega Punch landed, leaving Kelvin in the red, so I decided to switch to Liam this time to use Dig as to avoid any more damage. Luckily, the Dig immediately took out his Kangaskhan, as well as the Nidoqueen, as it is weak to ground type moves. After defeating Giovanni, I decided to run over to the fighting dojo to grab Hitmonlee, as I figure it might be useful for later. After thinking it over, I decided to heal up and take on Saffron City's gym first, as I had immediate access to it. Sabrina is the Saffron gym leader, with a team comprising of Kadabra, Mr. Mime, Venomoth, and, most scary of all, an Alakazam. I mentioned this earlier, but with a Psychic type Pokemon not having a super reliable weakness in this game, as Dark types aren't in Kanto, you can really only bank on using Bite and doing what little super effective and stab moves you can manage to pull off. I decided to lead with Jasmine, as Flamethrower is such a strong stab fire move that it would be easier. After almost OHKOing her Kadabra with Jasmine, Sabrina healed and then used Future Sight. Hoping that Jasmine could take it, I persisted and took out her Mr. Mime. Luckily, the Future Sight didn't do much, and Jasmine OHKO'd Sabrina's Venomoth, leading after that. But then, it was her Alakazam. It used Calm Mind, as I used Will-O-Wisp. Sabrina used a full heal, stopping the burn from continuing, and then used Psychic. With the Calm Mind it had previously used, it unfortunately took down Jasmine, making her our second death of the run. I then sent out Liam, hoping I could just use Dig to avoid further attacks, but Alakazam outsped and once again one-shot Liam the Sandslash. Looking back, I should have just taken the longer path and fought Koga first to fight Sabrina at the level cap. Because of this decision though, I lost two of my strongest potential Pokemon. I then sent Devin the Pidgeot out. Luckily, the Alakazam used Future Sight, allowing Devin to get an Aerial Ace off, taking down her Alakazam in one hit. Now, this was bad. Yes, I won, but lost not only one of the few fire types in the game, but also my personal favorite Pokemon on the team. I needed to go to the PC and regroup. While I still had majority of the team still, I needed to see who I could scrape together to recoup the loss of the battle with Sabrina. I mentioned earlier, but I obviously had the Cubone I caught in Pokemon Tower, who I named Agatha. I also had a Rattata from earlier in the run I named Riley. I figured the ground coverage would be nice, and the straight up physical attack powerhouse of Riley would be an amazing addition to the team. I also decided to temporarily swap out Kelvin the Venusaur to bring back Indy, the now Nidoqueen, to help take on Koga. Liam and Jasmine will be missed, but I can't end the run here. With the new lineup of Shay the Gyarados, Indy the Nidoqueen, Devin the Pidgeot, Ronnie the Raichu, Agatha the Marowak, and Riley the Raticate, I was ready to take on Koga. After catching up everyone on levels, I headed over to the gym. Now his team comprises of 2 Coughings, a Muck, and a Weezing. The main reason I brought in Indy over Kelvin was due to Indy being able to better handle the poison attacks, as well as deal more damage. Kelvin just couldn't compete here. Going into the gym fight, I decided to lead with Riley, as I figured she could deal with Coughing. After using a quick attack, the Coughing used Sludge, which immediately poisoned her, and she was barely able to scrape through the rest of that fight. I didn't plan on using her again, so I used her as fodder to weaken the Muck and get a clean switch to Agatha, who used Boomerang to finish the job. With the next Coughing having Levitate, I resorted to Agatha using Headbutt a few times before getting poisoned due to Toxic. Koga then healed the Coughing, forcing me to switch to Shay the Gyarados, which was honestly kinda lucky as the Coughing proceeded to self-destruct, taking nearly half of Shay's health. After getting poisoned and using a few Hydro Pumps, Koga's final Pokemon Weezing was taken out before I could get a final hit on Shay. Before going to get the next badge though, I quickly ran into the Safari Zone where I luckily ran into an Execute. After making my way to Cinnabar Island, I quickly grabbed the secret key in Pokemon Mansion. I also revived the Kabuto from the fossil I grabbed in Mount Moon and made my way to Blaine. Blaine is a fire-type gym leader with a team consisting of Growlithe, Ponyta, Rapidash. But honestly, nothing of importance happened here, as Shay swept his whole team with a Rain Dance setup using either Surf or Hydro Pump, depending on the Pokemon that was out at the time. Next was the last gym needed to take on the Elite Four and the champion Giovanni. With a new team comprising of Rhyhorn, Dugtrio, Nidoqueen, Nidoking, and another Rhyhorn, I decided to put Kelvin back on the team for this one and entered the gym. Again, leading with Shay against Giovanni's Rhyhorn, expecting things to go about the same way as Blaine did, I set up a Rain Dance and went to town. One Surf took down his first and second Rhyhorn. Another Surf took down his Doug trio. I decided to use Hydro Pump against his Nidoqueen, and that OHKOs that too. And did the same thing with the Nidoking. While the last 2 gyms were beyond easy, I knew that before taking on the Elite Four, I needed to do some more prep. I took a trip back to Cinnabar Island to buy some Pokeballs for my final few encounters, as well as a ton of healing items to use in between battles in the league. Then came the second to last rival fight. I led with Shay this time, but his Pidgeot ate a Hydro Pump, so I stacked up a few Dragon Dances to guarantee I outsped, and with a few Surfs took it out. A simple Hydro Pump took out his Rhyhorn, but then came his now Execute. I swapped to Devin right as it used Sleep Powder, putting Devin to sleep. I then tried to spam Fly, hoping Devin would wake up. Devin then proceeded to eat not 1, but 2 Solar Beams. Right as it was charging up for a third, Devin woke up and used Fly, taking out Execute before it could do any more damage. Now's the Alakazam fight. I swapped to Ronnie, who after weakening it and paralyzing the Alakazam, just couldn't finish it. I swapped to Agatha the Marowak, who luckily survived a Sidekick, and used Boomerang to finish it off. Then my rival sent out his Gyarados. With Ronnie unable to fight, I was forced to depend on Calvin to just tank any water type attacks. After using Sleep Powder to put it to sleep, Calvin then used Razor Leaf over and over, eventually taking out the Gyarados. Then there was the Charizard. I swapped to Indy, who took a Flamethrower upon switch out, then sadly died to the next one, due to me hoping it would outspeed. With few options at this point, I swapped back out to Shay, even though she had less than half health. Luckily, she had a Flamethrower, and her Hydro Pump did major damage. Knowing she could take another long as it wasn't a crit, I used Hydro Pump again. Shay took another Flamethrower, leaving her at 13 health, but she landed the next Hydro Pump, finishing off the Charizard and winning us the battle. However, now I need to think about who was to replace Indy, as at this point I realized I need to realistically rethink half my team, as not only is Indy dead, but Calvin just wasn't holding up, and after some careful consideration, I finally came up with the exact team I could use to win. It's finally time. The first Elite Four member is Lorelei, who is supposed to specialize in ice types, but in this generation, most of the ice types are also water type. With a team consisting of a Dugong, Cloyster, Slowbro, and Jinx, and a Lapras, I knew exactly who to lead with first. Sending out Ronnie the Raichu first would easily take out majority of her team in theory, even with him being more of a glass cannon. Using Thunderbolt against her Dugong nearly OHKO'd it, but it lived just long enough to set up a Hail and also heal. After using Quick Attack and another Thunderbolt, Dugong yet again escaped death with what must have been 1 HP. After a quick strength, it was done, however. Then she sent Cloyster, who, with its weak special defense stat, didn't stand a chance against a Thunderbolt. Her Slowbro took a Thunderbolt again, living on 1 HP. With a Quick Attack, Ronnie finished it. Her Lapras was scary though. After surviving a Thunderbolt with half health and using Ice Beam to put Ronnie to 11 HP, I knew the best thing to do was hope Ronnie could finish the job, or at the very least get the Lapras low enough to where we could get a clean switch in if he died. Luckily for me, Ronnie outsped, and with a final Thunderbolt knocked out Lorelei's Lapras. Then her final Pokemon Jinx came out. Knowing Ronnie at this point couldn't fight anymore, I swapped to Phoenix the Slowbro, a new member on the team. Ronnie was brought on as extra water coverage as well as a second Psychic user. However, after immediately getting frozen, I swapped in Satan the Hitmonlee. After missing a Mega Kick and taking a Sweet Kiss and an Attract, Jinx had full reign over the battlefield using Ice Punch over and over again until I had to switch to someone else. Having nobody who could reasonably take an Ice Punch hit, I had to send out Shay, who used Hyper Beam, which luckily took out Lorelei's Jinx without losing any of the team. After healing everyone, I had to focus in on the next plan of attack, taking on Bruno. Bruno specializes in fighting type Pokemon, but similar to Lorelei, that's a bit of a stretch as he has not 1, but 2 rock types on his team as well, with a team of Onix, Hitmonchan, Hitmonlee, and another Onix, and his star of the show Machamp. I decided to lead with Phoenix as his water typing could handle the Onix, and Psychic could take on the fighting types. Bruno's first Onix used Earthquake, which did barely anything, especially after getting OHKO'd with a Surf. Then his Hitmonchan tried using Sky Uppercut, which again did very little damage, with a Psychic quickly taking it and the Hitmonlee out too. The Onix followed the same story as the first one, and his Machamp used Bulk Up, but sadly it never got to see what damage it could do, because again, Psychic one-shot it. With Phoenix soloing that whole match, I knew I could win this thing. After healing up a bit of the damage I took, I went on to fight Agatha. Agatha is a ghost type specialist, my ass. Her whole entire team is made of poison types. Yeah, there's Gengar and Haunter, the only ghost types in the game, but they are also poison types, along with the rest of her team. I rest my case. Because of his last major success, I again lead with Phoenix, planning to mostly use Psychic and maybe a Surf or 2 if needed. Agatha's first Gengar used Confuse Ray, which caused Phoenix's first move to hit himself in confusion. Luckily, the next Psychic hit and immediately took out the Gengar. The Golbat got a Wing Attack off before suffering the same fate. Her next Pokemon Arbok got off a Screech before it too fainted to a Psychic from Phoenix. But then her next Gengar came out. It used Shadow Ball, knocking Phoenix to 29 HP, but Phoenix then used Psychic, again, knocking it out. When Agatha sent her Haunter out, I knew Phoenix shouldn't stay in, so I swapped to Selena the Exeggutor, who's my other Psychic user, as well as a replacement for Kelvin, as I still wanted Grass-type coverage, but just didn't see a use for him on the team outside of that. Agatha's Hunter got off a mean look before getting taken down by Selena's Psychic. Now it's time for the last Elite Four member to go down, Lance. With a team consisting of a Gyarados, 2 Dragonairs, an Aerodactyl, and his iconic Dragonite, I decided to lead with Ronnie as his Thunderbolt is super effective against majority of his team. Outspeeding his Gyarados, Ronnie took one Thunderbolt to take it down. When Lance sent his first Dragonair out, I then switched to Phoenix as he has the move Blizzard. Dragonair used Dragon Rage, which did do some damage, but Blizzard took it out quickly. Lance's next Dragonair used Thunder Wave, paralyzing Phoenix, but it didn't matter as Blizzard went through anyway. Now Lance's Dragonite can be scary, but I know Phoenix could take at least one hit and maybe get off a Blizzard, and that's exactly what happened. Dragonite outsped and used Outrage, putting Phoenix to 39 health. But luckily the Blizzard hit, OHKOing Lance's Dragonite. Then came the Aerodactyl. I swapped to Shay as she had the type advantage and could get off and Intimidate. Aerodactyl used Hyper Beam on my switch out, which Shay took with ease. Since Aerodactyl then needed to recharge, Shay was able to hit a Surf risk-free, putting Aerodactyl in the yellow. With another Surf from the Gyarados, Shay, the last Pokemon from Lance, was taken care of. Now the champion fight. Lance tells me that usually now is when I would become champion of the region, but somebody else beat me to it just prior. So I had to fight them for the title. I healed up all my Pokemon and went in to fight that guy. The final rival fight, that guy, our rival, again leads with his Pidgeot. I use Ronnie's Thunderbolt to try and get rid of it as fast as possible. Some things just never change, it OHKO'd it immediately. My rival sent out his Rhydon and I swapped to Shay. The Rhydon used Earthquake, which did nothing, and Shay countered with a Hydro Pump, which quickly took it out. When that guy sent out Alakazam, I decided to try and set up a Rain Dance while he did a Reflect. His Alakazam outspeeds and hit a Psychic, nearly killing Shay and putting her at 16 HP. I decided that this fight, I needed to use anyone that I could as fodder, if it meant winning, and that meant Shay too. Using Surf, not expecting to get off the hit, Alakazam for whatever reason used Future Sight, allowing Shay to live and get the last amount of damage done to get Alakazam off the battlefield. Then my rival sent out Exeggutor. I knew I should just sacrifice Shay at this point, so I let Exeggutor get an Egg Bomb off, killing Shay. Now this one hurt. Shay carried me and my team through the latter half of the run, and in the final battle it had to sacrifice itself to make sure that the rest of the team could win. I then sent Devin out to do some major damage with Fly, avoiding the Exeggutor's first Sleep Powder, knocking it down to yellow. Upon landing, the Exeggutor used Sleep Powder, again putting Devin to sleep. After waking up on the second attempt, Devin used Fly, again taking the Exeggutor out. Then came in the Gyarados. What a way to rub salt on the wound, man. After Devin took the attack drop from the Intimidate, I switched to Ronnie. Luckily, a Thunderbolt managed to take out the Gyarados easily, but now my rival's final Pokemon enters the battlefield. A Charizard. I keep Ronnie in, as Thunderbolt is super effective, and Ronnie can at the very least do a ton of damage before getting burnt to a crisp. A Thunderbolt knocks Charizard almost to red, and in response, a Fire Blast makes its way, incinerating the poor Raichu in its path. With 2 Pokemon down, at most, I'm only bringing 4 Mons with me at this point to the next region, and I don't want to lose anymore. I sent out Phoenix. Charizard heals a bit from a berry, and missed its next attack, forcing it to take a Surf from Phoenix and winning me the battle. After I claim my victory, Professor Oak comes in congratulating me and takes me into the Hall of Fame, with my whole team up on the board. Ronnie the Raichu, Devin the Pidgeot, Shay the Gyarados, Selena the Exeggutor, Phoenix the Slowbro, and Zayden the Hitmonlee. With only 2 losses during the Champion Gauntlet, both of which being in the last fight, I felt proud. I avenged Shay and Ronnie, and I now get to look forward to the next region, bringing the other 4 with me. Now it's time to go to Johto. With that, I did it. I completed Pokemon Leaf Green, the first of many runs and the start of the Genlock. With only 5 losses in the run, I'm realistically feeling pretty confident going forward into Soul Silver, and I'm hoping I can continue this streak of good luck. Thanks guys for watching. If you enjoyed the challenge, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know which Pokemon you might like to see me use in the future if I come across them. Alright guys, see ya.